Are you ready? For the very last time, I will say, Melissa, please persuade us.
What's in a name, that which we call a rose by any other name would smell so sweet? William Shakespeare wrote in Romeo and Juliet about two feuding families, the children falling in love with one another and not being able to be together. America is much like that. We have different ethnicities merging together, except we have permission and encouragement to unite and assimilate for the better of society. But recently, people are regressing back to hyphenating their American status by putting their ethnic background before American. When using your ethnic background before American, it lessens the value and reasons to assimilate. It forces communities to remain in their own ethnic group and not integrate with other Americans. Non-assimilation means different languages are being spoken, which causes communication breakdown in society due to not one language being spoken. It disrupts schools, social services, puts budgetary constraints on local and federal governments, and lowers economic growth for the people, communities that don't assimilate. Since 1915, when previous ethnic lines were dividing the country, Theodore Roosevelt cried for Americans to assimilate and rid itself of the hyphen by saying in a speech to the Knights of Columbus, "There is no room in this country for hyphenated Americanism. When I refer to hyphenated Americans, I do not refer to naturalized Americans. Some of the very best Americans I have ever known were naturalized Americans, Americans born abroad. But a hyphenated American is not an American at all. The one absolute certain way of bringing this nation to a ruin, of preventing all possibility of its continuing to be a nation at all, would be to permit it to become a tangle of squabbling nationalities, an intricate knot of German Americans, Irish Americans, English Americans, French Americans, Scandinavian Americans, or Italian Americans, each preserving its separate nationality, each at the heart feeling more sympathy with Europeans of that nationality than with other citizens of the American Republic. There is no such thing as a hyphenated American who is a good American. The only man who is a good American is the man who is an American and nothing else." President Woodrow Wilson also agreed and also regarded those whom he termed hyphenated Americans with suspicion, saying, "Any man who carries a hyphen about him carries a dagger that he is ready to plunge into the vitals of the Republic whenever he gets ready." These are some powerful words from men who saw different nationalities starting to rip apart a nation. However, it has now become a style of political correctness. These government bureaucrats, special interest groups pander to these different ethnicities, not only to gain their support, but to receive federal funding from our tax dollars. Social services, public schools, bilingual ballots, and the creation of different governmental departments all cost more to give to the one who doesn't assimilate because they need to hire interpreters and print out material in different languages. For example, what started out as meager funding of $159 million, the Bilingual Education Act in 1968 has continually grown and changed its name over the years to over $617 million in 07 and 08. There are currently 325 different languages being spoken in the United States, and the government plays favoritism towards only one other language besides English. If you do call yourself a hyphenated American, then the ones who call themselves just Americans will wonder where your allegiance stands, with the first or the latter. They may also think that maybe you're prouder of where you came from than being an American. Be proud that you are just an American. with the same right as anyone else that is naturalized or born citizen. By non-hyphenating, you're no longer separating yourself from other Americans. When doing so, others will be curious to learn about your heritage, and you will likewise about theirs. As we begin to learn as a united nation with multi-ethnic backgrounds, we start to understand each other better. With knowledge of each other's heritage, we can help one another and all communities. With the non-hyphenated American, assimilation is much easier. English will be the language, and immigrants will have educational and economic opportunities that just Americans have. These opportunities will lead them into job security and higher wages. Their communities will grow and prosper. With that being said, different ethnicities should be encouraged to celebrate their heritage, get together, share, and express where they came from and their traditions. Schools can celebrate different heritages in the classroom during certain studies. If enacted, we would cause more just Americans to reach out to naturalized citizens because they will know that we are united by a common thread, what this free country stands on. Just like Romeo and Juliet, we may find ourselves losing sight of the American heritage and evoking different ethnicities to combat one another, like the gangs of Miami, California, New York, each struggling to take over one group's ethnicity or the other. By being a plain American, you take the argument out of the equation and begin looking for solutions for the whole community and country. I urge you, naturalized or born citizens, to be just Americans. I'll encourage others to be just Americans and inform them why they should want to do so. When you say you are just American, you take in the principles and the pride of what our founding fathers and countrymen went through to establish this great nation you call home. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any questions from you?
Type of persuasive speech pattern Melissa used. Yes, she did. Questions for Melissa?
What made you bring up that topic?
Well, just the whole notion of what it is to be just an American. Like, why all of a sudden are we using this hyphenating, words before and afterwards? And I really didn't even think that there was a precursor to this. I didn't know that, that this was an issue back in 1900s. And then as I started looking into it, I was like, wow, history does circle back around. But I think it's using it in a little bit different way today. Like, it's more of a political measure and pandering to certain groups to, gain their support. And then they want federal tax money, and then that raises our taxes. And, some of this stuff is just needless. And I think we should just be an American.
My grandparents, when they came from Italy, did not speak Italian in their home. So my mother, my uncle, and my aunt grew up, first generation, born here, not knowing how to speak Italian because my grandfather said, I speak more Italian than my mother, then we're not going to grow up and speak Italian, we're going to grow up and speak English because we're Americans.
Yeah.
And wow, back then that was incredible. He was a member of the IAES, Italian American Society. And he quit that because he said they were holding on to the past. He wanted to be known as an American.
Yeah.
I think on our money, there's a real good speech to be made out of, it says on our dollars, e pluribus unum. out of many, one. And I think that has been ignored by all of the different cultures clamoring for their uniqueness, their place at the table. When your approach sounds very refreshing compared to what we see of all the cultures saying, well, I'm this American, I'm that American. And we just say, well, wait a minute, let's just call one another an American and act like one instead of acting so differently.
Yeah.
It's good thought. Good thought.
Some of the papers.
Yeah.
Like you fill out an application, are you applying for something?
Yeah.
Are you African American or you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
No, say I'm an American.
that's you gotta change all that.
I want everybody to be treated the same. I'm American, you're American.
A lot of different ethnicities, when they came over, they would speak it in their house, but as soon as they left the house,
Yep.
it was English.
Yep.
And it's real interesting to find out that the ones who don't speak English, that's a whole nother topic, they have lower wages and lower growth. And it puts a little bit bigger.
Well, even I
on
notice it
society.
in seeing students from all over the country, all over not only this country, but other countries. Here at Valencia, some you can tell that their primary language is still the language they're speaking at home, and the only time they speak English is when they come to school. And so their language is unfamiliar to them, and it is really pronounced in some cases.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments, thoughts? We're all different, but we're